I went live 2 hours ago.
Good morning, everyone, and Boker Tov. Welcome to our class on Mishlei, Proverbs of King Solomon. So last week we had the intro to the book of Mishlei. We got a little bit of a background and understanding of what the book is really all about. And today we hope to delve in to the actual text of the book, starting with chapter 1. So it's a weekly half-hour class, and we're going to try to cover a chapter a week. And of course, you can't read and delve into every verse in a half hour. There's so much wealth in this book. It's a wealth of wisdom. That's really what it's all about, right? So, as mentioned last week, I highly encourage you to study this on your own during the week, whether you go online and you could read it online, or you could buy one of the books that we recommended to study it, and then we'll discuss it every Thursday. We'll give an overview of the chapter and perhaps touch upon, delve a little bit deeper into some of the.
Mendel, I lost your audio.
Yeah, you muted yourself, Mendel.
Yes. Somehow.
Everybody else is live, but you're muted. Your volume kept going down also.
How about now?
Now we're good.
Okay,
Now we're
good.
good.
Okay. We try to use the fancier audio system, and we're not, technology doesn't always work for us. Sometimes it works against us. Okay, so where was the app? At all my opening jokes you heard?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so so where was I? That we're going to go through chapter 1. It's a lot. There's a wealth of wisdom, but we'll try to give an overview of the chapter and delve into some of the key verses to really get a better appreciation what King Solomon is here to tell us. We also said a l'chaim on our coffee. Okay, so chapter 1 has the first 6 verses as an intro, right? It's kind of welcoming. Hi, how are you? My name is King Solomon. I am here to teach you some wisdom through proverbs, through analogies, through ideas where you could build on it and understand the message through these proverbs. That's the first 6 verses. The rest of the chapter is talking to a child. King Solomon is talking to us, his children. Shema bini, listen, my child, and he starts to guide us, guiding the youth to follow the proper path, and don't get enticed with or lured into some of the the other areas, the sinners that may come and try to pull you away from the proper path. Don't go after them. That is really the theme of chapter 1. But I want to start reading outside some of the verses. So the opening of the book is chapter 1, verse 1. Mishlei Shlomo ben David, the Proverbs of Shlomo, of Solomon, ben David, the son of David. We obviously know who this is. This is King Solomon. Melech Yisrael, who was the king of Israel. I'm going to jump to verse 5. He says like this: Yishma Chacham v'Yosef lekach. The wise one may hear and increase his learning. V'navon tachbulois yikne. And a discerning one may acquire strategies. If you notice in the Hebrew, we use the word chacham and navon. Chacham means a wise one, and a navon also means someone who is wise. Here in the article, they translate it as a discerning one. In Hebrew, there are two words, chachma and bina, wisdom and understanding. But we are told that there's a difference between the approach to understanding, whether it is a chacham or a navon, chachma or bina. Chacham is someone who tries to understand the idea for itself. Teach me, talk to me, and I'll listen, and I'll understand it. Navon, bina, is to develop an idea. You give me some key points, and I will build on it. I will delve deeper into it, and I will develop the idea. I will extract some deeper nuances in what you have told me. So King Solomon is telling us that the ideas that he's going to teach us in this book, you got to be a chacham, starting with that, accept it, understand it, right? These are ideas of pearls of wisdom, as we say, and run with it. This is it. Incorporate it in your life. But in addition to that, King Solomon says, you also got to be a navon. You also have to take it and develop it and understand that there's more to it that is hiding, that is, under the, there's multiple layers of wisdom, and you need a good navon, someone that uses his bina attributes to develop and bring out so much more depth to these ideas. And he continues in verse 6, lahavin mashal umelitza, to understand a parable and an epigram, and to understand the militza, to understand what the parable is here to teach us. What's the lesson of the parable? And as we mentioned last week, that what's unique about these parables, that the parable is not only there to teach us something, but the parable itself, on the most simple level, on the most basic understanding, is true for itself. And we'll see this momentarily, an example of this. So you have the parable, which has a true idea, but then you have the lesson from the parable, which obviously is so many layers to it and can be understood in so many ways. Divrei chachamim v'chidoisam, the words of the wise and their enigmas. Rashi says over here that sometimes there are ideas that on our own we can't really understand, but it's something that our sages teach us, that we have to, more esoteric type of ideas that we have to accept from them as well. So this is the first 6 verses as an intro. King Solomon, it gives us the intro to the wisdom that he's going to teach us. Now, what is the first thing that he teaches us? Right? Imagine that you were King Solomon, and I'm writing a book of Mishlei. These are wise ideas for my children, for the Jewish people. Thousands of years later, we are still going to be hovering over these books and studying it. What is the first piece of advice that King Solomon teaches in this book? And that's in verse 7. The first thing is you have to have a solid foundation, because we're using wisdom. King Solomon was an intellectual. We're trying to understand things intellectually, but that can be very dangerous. If we're not anchored, we don't know where it's going to take us. So let's read this inside. The first thing it tells us is Yiras Hashem Reishis Da'as. What is the beginning of knowledge? The first thing, the foundation of knowledge is the fear of heaven, the fear of Hashem. Some people say this in their morning prayers as well. Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. The beginning of wisdom, the beginning of knowledge, the beginning of understanding. If you're using your mind to understand, it has to be grounded. In what? In Yiras Hashem. Because Chachma umusar evilim bazu. Because foolish ones scorn wisdom and discipline. What's he telling us over here? He's telling us something very powerful. every area of intellect, every area has a certain foundation that it's built on. Let's say, for example, science. Science, you could say, is built on theories, right? So it's ideas, but then there's experiments, right? Could you repeat it? Could you do it again? That's a foundation in science. When it comes to studying ideas of Torah, intellectual ideas, the foundation is being a God-fearing Jew. Recognizing that this is ultimately God's wisdom. Because otherwise, every idea has an opposite idea. Any idea that you think of, someone could say and use it for the opposite conclusion. For example, I'll start with a little joke, right? So there someone that comes up with this idea that they're going to start selling slippers. Slippers, okay. But they look around the market and said, there's so many stores over here in New Orleans. Let me find an island. Let me find somewhere far out. I'll start my business over there. So he sends 2 salespeople. Travel to this island. Check it out. Let me know what's going on there in regards to opening a slipper store. So they both travel there. And they send back 2 opposite messages. One person sends back a message, no one here wears slippers. Cancel the shipment. No point of opening the store. No one here wears slippers. Well, the second salesperson sends back a message, a telegram. Double the shipment. No one here wears slippers. Double the shipment. Right? One idea. You could look at it 2 opposite ways. Let's connect it to what we're studying now in the Parsha, right? We just had the story of Noah. The people were corrupt. The people were vicious. So what does God say? I got to destroy them. We bring a flood. What does God tell Noah after the flood? He shows him a rainbow. What does he say? I'm never going to do this again. Why? Because the people are born wicked. Leiv ha'adam, ram min urav. The heart of man is evil from its youth. And therefore, I will not destroy them. So, the same reason why we destroyed them is the same reason why we don't destroy them. So, any idea, any intellectual idea could be used in different ways. And therefore, it has to be anchored. It has to be grounded. You have to have a foundation. I'll tell you a little story. I have a friend of mine who tells me this story, that he was on a bus once, traveling to Boston. And he sat down on the bus. It's like a 3-4 hour drive from New York. And he sits down next to a Jewish student studying in BU. And they start talking about Judaism and the idea of kosher, keeping kosher, the kosher diet comes up. And this person comes up with this whole idea that kosher is not really what it used to be in the Bible, in the Torah. It's really about eating healthy. And as long as you eat healthy, whether it's kosher or not, a whole long theory. And my friend was kind of pushing back on it and telling him about what kosher is really all about, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the conversation, the student says, the truth is, I agree with what you're saying. It's just very difficult for me to keep kosher. Okay? So what happened over here? A person had difficulty with kosher. So now they're coming up with all these intellectual ideas to justify their way of life. When it comes to the world of intellect, you have to have a foundation, because otherwise you don't know where it's going to take you. So you're studying Torah, God's Torah. King Solomon's giving you wisdom. King Solomon says, don't do this on your own. If you don't have that Yiras Hashem foundation, you don't know where it's going to take you. You have to be grounded. So that is message number 1 that King Solomon tells us. And then he goes on to start speaking to the youth. And he begins this in verse 8 and 9. Shema b'ni musar avicha. This is one of the most famous verses of the book of Proverbs. Listen, my son. Shema. Just as we say Shema Yisrael, it means listen, but also means internalize. In Yiddish, we say you're able to hear, and then you're able to hear, to take it in, to not just hear with your ears, but to hear with your mind and make it real. Shema b'ni, listen, my son. Usar avicha, the discipline of your father. Ve'al titoish toiras imecha, and do not forsake the teachings of your mother. For they are an adornment of grace for your head, and a chain for your neck. What is he telling us over here? So this is one of a good example, right? The first idea, an example of the mashal and melitza, that the parable and the lesson of the parable have so many layers, and they're both true on a both basic level, and there are deeper ideas as well. So on the most basic level, the commentaries tell us, very simple, that King Solomon is telling us that listen to your parents. Your parents are there for your good. Your parents love you. And perhaps you thought that maybe they're doing it for ulterior motives, or they're terrible parents, they don't know how to educate, they did a terrible job raising us. Okay, we all make mistakes. But they did it out of love, and it's for your good. Listen to them. Listen to your parents. They were wiser than you are. Whether you understand that or not, listen to your parents. That's on the most basic level. And more specifically, for the father, we say musar avicha, the discipline of your father. For the mother, we say toras imecha, the teachings of your mother. Father, discipline, we are told, obviously, generally, we like to generalize. Very often, the discipline comes from the father, and the teachings come from the mother. But some of the commentaries say that the discipline over here is referring to ideas. The ideas that your father taught you, listen to them. The teachings of your mother is more about character. Your mother shapes you, who you are, good character traits, what's right and what's wrong, your morals, your ethics. Being a mensch comes from your mother. Of course, there's overlap. Fathers also teach morals and mothers teach ideas. But if we generalize, mothers teach character. They shape you for who you are. And the fathers teach ideas. This kind of fits to maybe the more contemporary idea that we understand that men like things and women like people, right? So things, ideas is what the father teaches. And people, character, comes from the mother. So that's on, you can say, the most basic level. Understand your past, understand your parents, and appreciate your parents. That's point number one. Will do you well in life. Point number two, you can say, a deeper layer. It's not just your parents specifically, but understand your roots. Appreciate where you come from. These are your foundations. Knowing your past, don't try to run away from it. Try to build on it. Understand who your parents were. Now, you may say, my parents weren't perfect. My parents had a lot of faults. Okay, we're not saying that your parents were perfect, but appreciate your past. Appreciate your heritage, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, some of the customs in the family. Appreciate that. They say that someone was once lost in Kentucky, and they're looking to go to Louisville, Kentucky. So he stops a farmer and says, tell me, how do I get to Louisville, Kentucky? Louisville, Kentucky. You see this dirt road over here? Take this dirt road for about 1.5 miles. You'll see this big boulder at the corner. You make a right, and then you make a left. I said, no, not a good idea. Try this way. Down this road, for about 3 miles, you come to a corner store. You make a right, you make a left. No, not a good idea. He says, you know what? Louisville, Kentucky. If I was going to Louisville, Kentucky, I wouldn't start here. Okay, so you got to know, where are you starting? We're not starting from here. we're already mid-journey. We have a foundation. We have a past. We have parents. Appreciate that. They contribute so much to who we are. And instead of running away from it, embrace it. And it's Shema B'ni, he's talking to the youth. And it was true, 2,500 years ago. And it's true today. The youth, very often, they like to separate themselves, to disconnect themselves from the past. We know better, right? Of course we know better. It's a new world. We're much more progressive. We have a different worldview. And there's something to it. Of course, there's fresh blood, fresh ideas. But ultimately, it's been tested and proven that, yes, you can build new ideas on previous ideas. But when the youth turns old, they realize what a fool I was when I was young. I should have appreciated a lot more what my elders were telling me. So, yes, we got to be progressive and we got to build new ideas, but make sure we're building them on old foundations, because the old foundations are the best foundations, right? So this is another layer to this same verse. Your parents, not literally necessarily your father and your mother, but your past. And then we have maybe even a deeper layer. We have what Rashi tells us, that Musar Avicha, your father over here is not literally your father, but it means God in the Torah. That appreciate what God has told you in the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Appreciate that. Toidas imecha, your mother, ima, mother, aleph, mem, aleph in Hebrew, also could be read as ummah, which means a nation. Appreciate what the nation, what our sages teach us as well. Not just our father, what God teaches us, but what the nation teaches us, what our sages teach us. And included in this is not just the rabbinic law, but it's also customs. We have different family customs, and they're unique to every family. And that's the beauty of Judaism, that we have family customs, and we should keep to these customs. And many of these customs actually became law, right? The big one, obviously, is the second day of holiday, right? Where we have in the diaspora, where we keep 2 days of holiday, because this was the custom for so many years because of the calendar. Not to get too into it, why it happened and how it developed, but there's an idea that because Jewish people have been doing something for so many years, it becomes Jewish law, because we appreciate the customs of the Jewish people. So that is another layer that Rashi says. And then you have the Hasidic interpretation to the same verse, where it teaches us that, similar to Rashi, that Musar Avicha is referring to the Torah, the written Torah, and Torah's Imecha, the teachings of your mother, is referring to the oral Torah, the development of the Torah, the Mishnah, the Talmud, the vast ideas of the Torah, the way they are developed. And while we are studying the oral Torah, always remember the seminal idea that comes from the Father, which is that the Torah is a book of wisdom. It's an amazing book, an amazing study. It's mind, it stimulates the mind. It's amazing. But always remember that the Torah is God's Torah. It's similar to the idea of Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem, that you always have to remember that there was a giver to the Torah, that there's a Nosein HaTorah, that the Torah is godly, is divine. Always keep that in mind as we study Torah. So we see over here just one verse, how we have multiple layers of understanding the message of this verse. The verses continue after talking about the importance of following in the path of the parents and of the path of your past. Then King Solomon says, but I know it may not be so easy, because you may be enticed by the sinners. And it starts getting very graphic about the hunters, the people who sin, the people who are murderers, the people who kill, thirsty for blood. And you may want to go after that. It may sound more exciting. And King Solomon says, we're going to skip to verse 15, Bini, my child, Al telech bederech itam. Do not walk on the way with them. Minna raglecha minesivasam. Restrain your foot from their pathways. Don't go with them. And the commentaries explain not only do you not go with them and do what they're doing, but even don't make as if. Don't hang out with them. It's interesting that the first idea that King Solomon is teaching us is very similar to what his father, King David, taught us in the first chapter, the first psalm, is opening with the same thing, right? Don't sit together with the scoffers, right? Same idea. Don't get enticed. Don't run away with these people, even if it's only superficially. I just want to hang out with them, and this is not who I am. I'm still going to be true to myself, to God. I'm going to do what's right. I'm just going to socialize with them. And King Solomon says, don't do it. Don't test yourself. First of all, there's others who are watching you, so you don't know how it's going to look to them. But even for yourself, don't test yourself. It's important to surround yourself in a positive environment. And just one last thing before we close the chapter, and the rest of the chapter is really on this theme about not going after the people who are trying to lure you in. We find multiple times in this chapter where King Solomon refers to a pesi. Pesi means like the foolish one, the fool. Who is he talking to? Who is the fool? And the commentaries are divided on who is the fool that King Solomon is talking to. Some say it means literally. It means people who are foolish, people who are very superficial, people who don't ask any questions. They just do. They say like a jellyfish, right? A jellyfish has no brain. It's just an instinct. It just swims, it eats, it bites. There's no plan in life. There's no bigger picture. There's no stepping back and saying, how am I doing today? What is my plan? What am I going to accomplish? There's no why questions for the jellyfish. And some people are living a life like that, and we refer to them as a fool. Why are they a fool? Because everything is on the surface. I'm just going to get through life. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll get through the day, I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up in the morning, get through the day, and go to sleep. So King Solomon says, ask questions. Figure things out. Bring some depth into your life. So that's one way of looking at it. But then there's another way of looking at it. That who is the pesi, who is the fool that King Solomon is talking to? It's talking to all of us who are the youth or youthful. Our brains are undeveloped. We're young. And we tend to make decisions with such confidence because in our minds we think that we know it all, but we're undeveloped. Our brains are undeveloped. King Solomon says, remember, you're a fool. You're young. You don't have it all. You don't have the capacity to know everything. It's okay to know your weakness and understand that there's more to the picture. And therefore, today in Western society, it's an open book. Read everything, try everything. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, you'll just grow from all these experiences. And King Solomon says, you know what? It's okay not to test yourself. It's okay to say, I don't know if I have the capacity to delve into this thing without knowing enough to counter it. And this is on an emotional level and on an intellectual level. Whether it's on an emotional level and says, well, I shouldn't hang out with everyone. I shouldn't go to certain places because I may not be able to stand up to the test of not getting involved in something I know I shouldn't get involved in. But also on an intellectual level. If I start reading books I should not be reading, do I know enough to say, I know this is right or I know this is wrong? So maybe I shouldn't read it. It's okay. I once had this argument. I was in, I'll tell you where I was. I was in Venice, Italy. I was in the Jewish ghetto over there. I spent a few weeks in Venice, Italy. It was a fascinating summer that I spent there. And someone came by and started asking me questions about other religions. And a little bit I read here and there, I heard some lectures. I was able to kind of carry the conversation. But they once asked me and says, why don't you study in depth all these other religions? So you'll know what Judaism is. You'll know what the other religions are. And guess what? If you feel that Judaism is the right religion, so you go with it. And if not, you'll be thankful that you open your mind to other religions. And he wasn't only asking me as like me per se, but like generally, why don't we encourage the Jewish youth to explore all religions? And what I told them, and I think this is exactly what King Solomon is telling us, calling us a fool, is that we recognize that we not necessarily know enough about our own religion to tackle other religions. It's okay to understand that we have a deficiency. We are a fool in this area. So before I fully understand and have a good grasp on Judaism, why would I search in the other ideas? Not because I'm afraid that maybe what I have isn't right. It's not about being afraid. It's about being responsible and knowing that before I have a full grasp on my own religion, I don't have to be reaching out to other religions. And unfortunately, in my conversations with some people who did leave their own religion, right? They left their Judaism and they went to other religions. And I would ask them questions as why. And they said, well, because this religion has this idea, that, and some beautiful ideas, right? And all religions have beautiful ideas. But then I told them, do you know that Judaism is also such a rich religion? Have you taken the time to properly study? I mean, look behind me, right? There's a library, a vast library. It takes a lifetime. I mean, we have right over here, we have the Talmud. I mean, who studied the entire Talmud? You have Code of Judaism, you have ethics. There's so much in Judaism, right? So people are searching in other places, but they don't know what they have in their back pocket. You have it, right? So King Solomon says you're a fool. Why are you a fool? Only because you feel that you have it all. You feel like I already, I mastered it. Now I want to search in other places. And King Solomon says, you have an undeveloped brain. You're a youngster. You're a teenager. Of course you make foolish decisions because we're not blaming you. That's just who you are at this point, but you don't recognize it. So King Solomon says, let me call a spade a spade. You're a fool. Your brain is undeveloped. You don't know everything. You have deficiencies. Recognize it, and therefore don't test yourself. Don't test yourself. We say it in our prayer every morning. Don't test yourself. So fully try to grasp what you have. Recognize your past, your teachings of your mother, the teachings of your father. This is gold. You have it. Embrace it. Yeah, maybe one day you'll be able to explore other things, both emotionally and intellectually. Well, that's what King Solomon is teaching us. And that is, I think, the gist of chapter 1. Teaching the youth, follow the proper path. Understand where you come from, understand what you have, and keep it. And just to conclude with a little anecdote, a little story, that a number of years ago when I was doing my weekly visits to the hospital on my Friday, bringing out some challah to Jewish patients, I meet an elderly woman. I mean, elderly in her high 90s. I think she was 97 or 98 years old. And she tells me that she's listed as on the Jewish list, but she tells me that she wasn't really raised with much Judaism, and she didn't marry Jewish, and she didn't raise her children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren to be Jewish. And in fact, her children, which I met later, her daughter, doesn't even consider herself Jewish. But she says she was born to Jewish parents. She had 2 Jewish parents. She is, 1,000% Jewish. And she says, the only thing that I do is I light Shabbat candles. And why? No one ever told me to light Shabbat candles. But from when I was a young child, I always noticed my mother and my grandmother lighting Shabbat candles every evening. And that was like etched in my mind. This is what a Jewish woman has to do. So 90 years later, there's a woman in Metairie, Louisiana, lighting Shabbat candles because that's what her mother did. So that's what we say. The mother teaches character, teaches who you are, and sometimes by something so subtle, of just doing something consistently, and the child sees this. So this is the beauty of not running away from our past, but incorporating the ideas of our past into the present, and of course, it will last into the future. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you for joining us this morning for chapter 1 of Proverbs, and I look forward to seeing you next week for chapter 2.
Yasher koach.